For most of the year, Shirala is a sleepy village tucked away in the gentle folds of the Western Ghats in the state of Maharashtra, some 371 kilometers southeast of Bombay. But once every year during the monsoon, Shirala wakes up to celebrate the great Hindu serpent festival of Naga Panchami. Held on the 5th day of the month of Shravana according to the Hindu calendar, Naga Panchami is thought by some to celebrate this truce between the Aryan conquerors and the people who originally lived in India and worshipped snakes. The festival is marked by pious fasting, ritual bathing, and worship of images of sacred nagas or mythological cobras such as Ananta, which means endless, and when depicted eating its own tail represents eternity. Offerings of flour and milk are placed before holes where snakes are known to dwell. Ploughing ceases for the day to avoid even the accidental killing of a snake. To most Hindus, Naga Panchami has become yet another festival in a crowded calendar of feast days. To the villagers of Shirala, it is a living faith. A central tenet of their creed is that one of their ancient sages was offered a boon by Shiva. A practical man, the sage asks the Omnipotent One to protect his people for all time from the dreaded cobras that infested the rice fields of Shirala. Shiva granted this boon, and to this day the people of Shirala believe they have nothing to fear from the deadly cobra. To many of us who have heard of the Shirala celebrations, Naga Panchami was identified with mystifying goings on. We decided to take a deco for ourselves. It started out as a pilgrimage of doubting Thomases. We arrived in Shirala a day before the festival. An air of expectancy hung over the village while the women were fasting and preparing the offerings to be given to the Nagas. The next day, the men were out in the rice fields recruiting cobras for the festival rites. We jumped into a green rice field, damp from the monsoon rains, following a hardy Maharashtrian peasant at a discreet distance. He had a stick under his arm and an earthenware pot in his hands. All of a sudden, he squatted before a hole and began to probe it with his stick. Soon, like some magician, he had coaxed out a shy cobra. Handling the serpent almost reverently with no trace of fear, the man rather lovingly prodded the cobra into the pot. The man explained that this was only one of several cobras he had caught over the past few days. There were many men like him, he added, who were out in the rice fields catching cobras for the festival. The big day dawned with the villagers taking their ceremonial baths. Later they formed a procession and in high spirits wound their way to the tiny village shrine, bearing the large earthenware pots containing the cobras. At the temple, the cobras were allowed to emerge and were ritually handled by the owners. To the chanting of bhajans, the sacred snakes were displayed before the deity one by one, their tails in the owner's hands and their terrifying heads held upright. Their magnificent hoods flared and swayed as if to some silent music. Standing spellbound, staring at snake after snake, or rather being hypnotically stared at by them, I felt reduced to a speck in the eyes of the cobras. Shirala became transformed into Medusa, the Greek gorgon of the serpent locks whose gaze turned men into stone. The feeling of dread and repugnance that venomous reptiles universally inspire probably led to the cobra's worship and eventual deification. By the time the Aryans came to India, they found a flourishing snake cult. Serpents became associated with gods, particularly with Lord Shiva, one of the Hindu trinity. He is often depicted with a snake round his girdle and another round his neck. The snake is also a fertility symbol. It was probably for fertility that the women of Shirala prayed as they knelt, heads bowed low, within striking distance of a cobra. In front of the serpent were the traditional offerings, milk, grain, flowers, and burning camphor. By noon, similar rituals had been performed in every Shirala home, for in India, serpents have long been considered protectors of the domestic hearth. In Shirala, even children handle snakes, graduating from the non-venomous kind to the cobra. It is common to see little boys strolling around with sleek brown red snakes hanging from their necks. One snake lover observed, "The cobra is worshipped all over India, but it is still feared. Only among the people of Shirala is the cobra considered good." Romulus Whitaker, a well-known herpetologist, examined several cobras in Shirala on Naga Panchami day and found the poison fangs intact. And yet the snakes do not attempt to strike their handlers. What does one make of all this? Accept the story of Shiva's boon to the ancient sage of Shirala or refuse to believe what one has seen? All I know is that I watched the late afternoon cavalcade of caparisoned bullocks drawing carts with cobras exhibited on little platforms. My earlier terrors were transformed into an inexplicable trust for the serpents, a trust I now shared with all of Shirala.